The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Again, Jesus left the district of Tyre and went by way of Sidon to the Sea of Galilee into the district of the Decapolis. And people brought to him a man who was deaf and who had a speech impediment and begged him to lay his hand on him. He took him off by himself away from the crowd, and he put his finger into the man's ears and, spitting, touched his tongue. Then he looked up to heaven and groaned and said to him, Ephphatha, that is, be opened. And immediately the man's ears were opened. His speech impediment was removed, and he spoke plainly. He ordered them not to tell anyone, but the more he ordered them not to, the more they proclaimed it. They were exceedingly astonished, and they said, He has done all things well. He makes those who are deaf hear, and those who are mute to speak. The Gospel of the Lord. Ephphatha, be opened. You want me, I want you, my sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading, yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight, come on, dance with me, I'm levitating. So that's a now somewhat old song from about 3-4 years ago by the British Albanian artist Dua Lipa. The song Levitating is something that I looked at recently because I have to admit I'm a little tired of the songs that are stuck in the top 10 right now. I don't find them inspiring much at all. And I'm also a little curious as to why we're not moving with some new music, why we're not listening to new stuff, and why there's at least a critical mass of people consuming music right now who seem to be caught in the same loop of the same old music over and over again. Well, I would suggest maybe it's because they're not open to something different or new. They're not moving in some way, looking for, I don't know, another sound or another horizon. And that might be indicative of where we are and where Jesus in today's gospel is challenging you and me. Might be this way in which Jesus, in so many of these gospel scenes where he encounters a situation, either through a cure or sometimes more often, though, through opening up the set of relationships in that situation, he is able to break things open and move them forward. Stuff that's been stuck, relationships, situations of oppression or suffering that have been stuck in that way, get opened by Jesus time and time again. And today's gospel is a perfect example of that. And in fact, in this gospel, he uses this word, as is typical in Mark's gospel, the only gospel to use probably those exact Palestinian Aramaic words that Jesus spoke himself. Ephphatha, the be opened, using the very word that Jesus probably did when he encountered this man who could not speak. And also the way in which Jesus was not only willing to stop and pay attention to this man's predicament, but he was willing to literally step into this guy's life, literally his space, so to speak. I mean, it's a very intimate scene where Jesus is unafraid to pay attention to the different aspects of this man's condition, right? It's not just that he cannot hear, he also has a speech impediment, and Jesus literally touches those parts of his infirmity, right? He in some ways affirms the man himself while being unafraid to be a part of his infirmity, right? It's fascinating to me the way in which Jesus is willing to be himself so open as to step into this man's reality and transform it. And I can't help but think, too, that Jesus himself is also transformed in this. But I am curious, maybe like the same way we're stuck with listening to the same old music over and over again, I do feel like sometimes we, right now, especially here in the United States, we're not real open. We're not real open to a lot of things. And in fact, I think we're stuck. I think the one of the signs of real growth one of the signs of real leadership is when people are open to where we can go to make things better, to where we can go so that we grow into something more, where we can move and be open to what needs to be. When we all of a sudden kind of circle the wagons or get fearful, we back away from any kind of growth. We all know that. Fear is the worst kind of impediment to real decision making and real leadership. And in fact, I would argue that right now we have a critical mass of Americans who are attracted to that kind of fear-led, fear-mongering, that kind of a backward, I'll put the word out there, backward leadership and vision. We need to go back to something because growth or moving ahead is too much. So we're stuck. We're not only stuck, but sometimes we're just so far not open to the point where we close everything off. Our borders, our relationships, our learning, our ideas, we close it all off. So I do wonder if this gospel today is particularly timely for you and for me, because we see that Jesus, as he does in many other situations, have an openness to himself, an openness to somebody's real predicament, somebody's reality. There's an article I require for my students in every class I teach by Simone Weil called The Right Use of School Studies. And she contends that if we're really to get into serious learning, if we're going to get into serious practice of love, in fact, we need to pay attention. That attentiveness is the key to it. But the real attentiveness comes when we can get to that place where we can actually look at another person and say, how are you? How are you really? And to be able to then hear whatever they have to say, to receive them for who they are and how they are. And if we can do that, then we will be able to understand their situation and move forward with them, and they with us. We'll have a real encounter. We'll have real knowledge. And she argues, we'll have a real practice of love, of neighbor, and of God. That only in that attentiveness that we cultivate in our school studies and we cultivate in our living can we get to that high attentiveness where we can be truly open, and that ultimately leads us to the practice of love, of neighbor, and love of God. But we have to do what Jesus is doing in this gospel today and have that openness. So we hear the very words that Jesus used. One of the rare moments that we know exactly what Jesus said. And maybe it's what Jesus is saying to you and to me in the clearest way. Be open. Ephphata. Be open to one another and to where we can go together. Let's overcome where we have closed ourselves off, where we have held back or gone backward into some kind of fear or place of stagnation. Let's step forward in a way where we can practice love, the love that's demanded now for us at this time. And maybe let's also start listening to some new music, huh? Let's move away from the same old lyrics over and over again. I had to go back to 2021 and listen to our friend Dua Lipa, who is levitating. She's open to moving up, to renegading, to coming forward in a new movement, a new dance. So friends, I'm with her. I want to levitate or move forward in an open way and be open to what that may lead me to. Amen.